Good, hang on. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This is my, as promised, update. I'm trying to be a little more organized now. This hopefully will be short. I brought my timer. This is going to be entitled, I'm Whipsawed by My Drugs. And I don't mean this to be a screed against the medical community, but if you look at the last video I did, I was feeling pretty good. I mean, I really was. Well, I did that a day or two right after I got out of the hospital. It's one of the few times I went to the hospital and I came out feeling much better than when I went in. So this is 4 or 5 days later, almost a week later. Yeah, it is. It's exactly a week later. 1 week later, I feel worse than I did when I got out of the hospital. And so I just have one problem after another. And I'm pretty sure, let me interrupt myself for a minute. I'm taking a lot of drugs. This is how I keep track of my drugs. You will note the yellow is I take in the morning, and the blue I take in the evening. And they're organized, and it sort of says what they're for. There's a lot of drugs there. And so I'm going, oh my. So they had made an appointment for me from Kaiser for 4 days after I got out. So it was like Tuesday. I got out on a Thursday, so they made it for Tuesday. And I thought, okay, they made the appointment, didn't ask me. It was my GP, who I love. She's a great gal. We have a communication problem. English is her second language. She's got a slight speech impediment. She has to wear a mask, and I'm hard of hearing. It's not a match made in heaven, but she is just great. She listens to me. She's open-minded, and she's whole food, plant-based, which is the important part. So I thought, okay, they set the appointment up. I'm going to set the agenda. So I make up an agenda for us, and the agenda says, let's adjust my meds. You know, if you're a diabetic and you go on the whole food plant-based diet, you can totally get off insulin in 10 days, but you don't dare do it unless you do it under a doctor's supervision, because they have to check you and they have to adjust your insulin level down as your body starts to make its own, or it always makes its own as it starts to be able to use its own. So that's the theory I went on. I thought, well, I was taking all of these drugs here, taking all of these, and I didn't feel good, but I was having angina and all, but I didn't have the symptoms that I now started to have without changing the meds. They didn't change the meds after I got out of the hospital. I just continued on where I was going. So on my agenda for my doctor's meeting, I had insomnia. Oh my goodness, do I have insomnia now. You know, as you get in your 80s and you're male, you have to urinate a lot at night. So that's just the way it is. But I would get up to urinate now, and I couldn't go back to sleep. And I'd be up, and I'd be an hour, and I have to go urinate again, and I hadn't even been to sleep. One night, I got up, and I made this chart up. I'm going crazy. I was up for over 2 hours. I wrote a note. I made this chart at 2 a.m. This chart is a matrix that I made up. It has the drug, then it has the side effects across. So the side effects I was and still am suffering from is dizziness. Insomnia is the first one. Dizziness, lightheadedness, unstable walking, which I didn't have before. Of course, I couldn't walk before. Maybe I was unstable. Constipation, cold hands and feet, and then I have an upper body rash. I mean, I didn't have these things before. So I made this matrix. This is the drug. This is the different ones they have, and you can see they're pretty well filled in. The point being that I made this at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it took me well over an hour to make it, and I didn't sleep well. So that was the first problem I'm having. The insomnia, well, I just said them all. So I go to see my doctor, and bless her heart, I tell her what just like I'm telling you, and she says, "Well, what do you want to do?" I'm thinking, really? I said, "Well, this drug says that it causes dizziness, optical imbalance." I thought that was an interesting one. She says, "Well, we don't want the purpose," and I also had the purpose of the drugs written down. The purpose is to keep your heart stable when you have AFib or a flutter. And she says, and she knows I'm scheduled on the 20th of next month, and she says, "Let's hold off on that and then come back after the 20th. I said, "Oh, all right." So there was another drug, and it causes, a lot of them, 1, 2, 3, almost all of them cause insomnia, but you figure if they all can cause it and you put them all together, that can't be good for you. Well, I mean, yes, drugs are good for you. So she says, she said, "Well, the main purpose of this drug is to open up your vessels." And I said, my vessels are open. I'm not worried about that. I wasn't getting sufficient blood because my heart was inefficient. And she agreed. She said, "All right, cut that one in half. And if it doesn't work, well, then if you start to have angina again, well, then you can go back." And I thought, now there's a reasonable approach. And she did that with another drug. And then I was taking a drug for acid reflux. And I really hadn't had the acid reflux for a while. But you know how you go along and you take a pill, and then you don't need it, and I sort of forget that I'm taking it. She said, "Why don't you drop that entirely?" I said, "Well, that seems fair." So basically she cut one drug in half. She cut one drug by 3/4. I'm only taking 1/4 of that one. And another drug, but they hadn't, I'd been on this drug, well, for a long time, since I had GERD. And so I dropped that entirely, and my symptoms have moderated a bit. So we'll see where it goes from here. But you remember in the last video how crowded it is. I mean, I had a hard time getting to see her. I had an appointment. They made the appointment for me, and I get there, and she said, "Well, I'm overlooked. I'm over." I thought, yeah. She was so sweet. So that's where I am with the drugs, and that's where I am in my recovery and in this my new journey back to health. Now you remember Darwin. Darwin is the fella across the hall from me, across the ward from me when I was in the hospital. So I called him, and we set up a date to have lunch. Oh, that reminds me, I have a new program. It's called Lunch with Al, and that's where I interview just ordinary people that have been on the whole food, plant-based lifestyle for a period of time and have had amazing results. And you'd be surprised how many of those people I know. I've already published one with Esther, and most of everybody knows Esther, but I'm going to publish them every Wednesday. They're about 6 to 10 minutes long. They're very, very short, and so I would encourage you to go and watch them. Okay, back to Darwin. I was supposed to meet him, and I get there, and he doesn't show up. So I'm going, oh my. So I come home, and I try to call him, and I can't get through. And then all of a sudden, he calls me back. And he said, "Oh, I locked my keys in the car." And I said, "Oh, okay." you want to do it another day? Yes. He said, let's do it Tuesday. I said, okay. That was the same day I had my doctor's appointment. So he had been out of the hospital well over a week, and I had been out of the hospital, just, I don't know, a week, not quite a week, 4 days. So I get there, and I just about get there, and the phone rings, and it's Darwin. Oh, he said, I'm running late. I said, oh, okay, no problem. So I go back, and I said, well, instead of 11:30, when do you want to meet? About 12:30? He said, all right. So I said, all right. So I go home and I wait, and then I go back, and I get just about there, and he calls again, and he says, Al, he says, I can't make it. He said, I'm laying in bed. The nurse just left. He said, it's the meds they gave me. He said, they're just knocking me flat. And I said, Darwin, I can sympathize with you. I know what that's like. So I'm pretty positive about this. I have been faking it really well with everybody, and people didn't know how much of an invalid I was and how little I could do. And I'm just concerned that I have deconditioned my body, and I need to get back in shape. So I'm taking walks. I'm extending the walks every day. My bike buddies have been calling me. I'm going to start riding. Well, of course, it's raining and cold right now. I'm pretty much a fair weather rider. But I go out and walk. We walk the dog. The dog likes to sniff and pee a lot, so we don't go that fast. So I'm building it back slowly. And I just wanted to thank everybody. And let's see how long. Oh, this is 12. Well, that's not bad for me. All right. I will talk to you the next time. This is it for today.